In the previous video, in part 2 video of dynamic memory, I explained how you can manage a dynamic array of objects. I strongly recommend you to watch part 2 to make yourself more comfortable for this content. Here I will take one more step related to part 2 and talk how you can manage such dynamic array when its objects have dynamic string or dynamic array of characters as their member. I have this code from the part 2 previous recording. We have student type, which is used to create student type objects which contain name and ID, which is student information. This is a function to allocate the dynamic memory for array of student objects. This is a function to read the data from the user into the array. This is a function to process the array data or the data in the dynamic array, specifically to determine the maximum and minimum ID values amongst the array objects. This is a function to deallocate the dynamic array or to clean up the dynamic memory. In the main function, we have a client code to use those functions. The use of memory allocate function and use of a data entry function, use of the process function, and use of memory deallocate or the cleanup function. Now, in this code, we want to see what happens or how to do these management functions if this student object, we have a dynamic array of object, and each object in this array contains this string in the form of dynamic array itself. That means dynamic array inside the dynamic array. So for this name to be able to store the data in the dynamic array, we need to change this to pointer. Then we don't have 31 characters anymore. This is a pointer. Now with this pointer, this allocation will actually each object in the previous case, let me just start from the previous case. In this case, each student object will require 32 bytes plus 4 bytes, 33, 34, 30, total 36 bytes of data or the memory space. But if I change this to pointer, then each object will actually require the amount of memory space that is required to store the address and the amount of memory space that is required to store integer, which is in this case 4 byte, and the address will require 8 bytes memory space, total 12 bytes. That means the object becomes smaller, but this pointer will be actually pointing to a dynamic memory space, and that space will actually require the amount of memory space that is actually required to store the name. Now in the memory allocation, we don't need to make any changes. Each object will have this amount of memory space allocated, but when we enter the data, we cannot copy the data name, particularly name, directly into the this pointer. So you need to have memory space allocated before you can read data into this place. So for that purpose, what I want to do, what you can do here is typically you can create a temporary array, static array inside the function character array. Let me call this t name, temporary name, and I assume that the maximum number of characters in the name the user enters is not more than, let's say, 64 characters in the name. If you have a requirement, you have a situation where the user may enter more than 64, then you can have 128 to be in the safe side. But I will be having 64 here. Now once you have this, then I do not want to read directly in the name here. I actually want to read in this temporary array. Then after that I want to do the memory allocation for the name. The way we do is like we did before, pointer is equal to new, then character, then the amount of bytes you want to allocate to be available to store the name, and to make sure that only required amount of memory space is allocated, then you can determine the length of this name and plus 1 extra byte for null character. So we can use this function, strlen function, to find out the name, length of the name that was entered by the user, plus 1. Then once you have this memory allocated, then you can copy using this function strcpy into sptri.name and from t name. Now this will actually do the copying operation in the dynamic memory space. But if you want to use this strlen and strcpy, make sure that you actually include the library cstring. I think that should be it for this data entry function. For the processing part, we don't need to do anything because we are not doing anything with the name itself. For the name, we are only doing processing with the ID. For deallocation, there is this is a little bit tricky, since we have this dynamic array, and within this array each object is pointing to another dynamic array. So first you need to release all this, because if you directly release this array, then this dynamic memory space will not be released. There is no way you can access this memory, and that will lead to memory leak problem. So first you need to release this dynamic memory one by one, all the dynamic memory belonging to all the objects, and after that you can release this array. So you can do the following. Before you delete this dynamic array, you iterate through over all the elements of the array. For int I equals to 0, I less than number of students, I plus plus, and then you delete sptr I dot name. So once you, this loop will actually complete the deletion of all the dynamic array below that was allocated to store the name. Then after that you can delete the entire array. I think this is should be the complete deletion of all the dynamic memory space. And in main function we don't need to do anything, so I think this should work. So let me do the compilation and testing of this code. Switching to the terminal, compilation and linking. I think there is one small issue, was not declared in this scope. Let me go back to the editor and try to solve the problem. What was the line number there? 44. Line number 44. So it doesn't have access. So you need to pass this number of student here in this case. So int number of student, and also when you call this function you need to pass number of student. So I think this should be okay now. Let me go back to the terminal and try to compile and link. There's another problem. Oh, I think there is a typo issue in line number 45. Going back to the editor, line number 45. Yeah, SPTR, it should be. Yeah, okay. Now it's okay. Now let me execute it. I think I should let me clean this up and execute again. How many students? I will enter 3 students, and student information, first ID, let me enter 3003, and Jackson, and 5005 Harry, 1001 Christy. Now you can see the minimum value ID value is 1001, maximum ID value is 5005. So it is working. This is all I wanted to discuss here on this topic. In the next recording, I will discuss what will happen when you have not the string but some array of some other type. So let's say int or float. So how you can deal with this situation, because this is a little bit different than how you would deal with a character array, because for the character array or a string we have this sort of functions that actually make it easy for us to do the things, perform the things, but in this in other types it is a little bit tricky. So I will discuss all that in the next recording.